Hello and welcome back to Blood and Ashes. This is episode 53. I'm your host Mo, and I'm joined again by my fleet-footed friends Jody.
Hello.
And Willie.
Good day.
Are you trying to quickly puzzle out, Jody, what the reference to fleet-footed might be?
Yes. No, not really, but you could tell us.
Take a guess.
You saw the Namor Wakanda Forever trailer? He's got feathers on his feet? I don't know.
No, I'm trying specifically to relate it to the content of the stuff that we are covering in each episode.
Matt's moving an army
What was in
really
chapter
fast.
1? I read that like at the beginning of the week.
Matt dancing.
Ah, there you go. I think it's because of Matt dancing. Is that why, Morris?
I'll edit all the other pontification right out. I actually considered like doing each of yours differently, like relating to your specific chapters, but then Jody, yours dealing with the Forsaken, like my scheming, my manipulative, my sadistic friend Jody, like none of them worked. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll just tar everyone with the same brush.
Thanks.
Speaking of which, man, chapter 6 is a rough one. Hey, I wanted to say sorry for sticking you with that Forsaken chapter, Jody, but I fear that if Willie took it, he'd be lost to the light forever.
Yeah, you can't give him that shit.
I mean, it's easy to forget just how dark the Wheel of Time gets at times. I mean, I don't know if I'm talking ahead, if you've read these chapters like a little while ago and you don't remember, but like all the stuff about Semirhage and like the torture scenes and stuff. I mean, it is
I
pretty
kind
hectic.
of skimmed over that in my my summary.
The beauty of the books now, as we go deeper into the pointy end of the story, is that the Forsaken really start getting into their own. The ones that still alive,
Yeah.
you know, they really start getting evil and conniving, and the easy ones taken out.
Yes, the one-dimensional ones, and now the really juicy ones are left over, and you get a great insight into Sammael, Graendal, and Semirhage in these chapters, and
Big
we've
time.
gotten a bit of Demandred already as well. So that's 4 of them in this book that we are really like focusing on, and we'll talk about it when it happens. But I mean, the content of the actual chapter is, I mean, it's pretty rough, but it's not super graphic. But it is incredibly creepy and terrifying. Like when we talk about Semirhage's past, even in the Age of Legends and what she does here, it's rough going. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. We start off merrily enough with Matt and even.
Oh, yes.
I have a dad joke.
Oh, okay, cool. Lighten us up before we get started.
Just to lighten the mood.
Please do.
How much does it cost to buy a large singing group? Acquire? Okay, fine. How much does it cost to acquire a large singing group?
That sucks.
That made
I'm
me
going to
giggle.
approach this joke as an Aielman and say, so how much does it cost?
I'm sure it was a funny joke.
I'm sure it was a funny
You
joke.
must explain
Jody.
it to us.
You must explain it to us sometime.
I shall.
All of that said, I mean, do you guys also find that this book has taken off at a gallop? Like I'm pretty hooked in a way that I have not really been at the very, very start of a book. We're only covering chapters 5, 6, and 7 here, and I'm in.
I see what you mean, but yesterday I was getting quite annoyed with all the repetition at the beginning of every book. Again, about
there's a lot of that.
Tel'aran'rhiod and how it all works, and I was like, yeah, I get it, RJ.
Especially
Just
that chapter, yes.
Get on
I will
with
be
it.
breezing over quite a lot of that as well.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Look,
Yeah, I hope so.
Just into perspective, I think by the time that Robert Jordan got around to publishing the next book, he's maybe even forgotten, so he's reminding himself.
Yeah.
There was a lot of time in between. So we are doing this like crazy
Not that much
themes
time.
back to back. I'm trying to give the guy some credit. I mean,
Give him some slack. But no, he's. I think like in these early books, it's like a year or 2 between them. It's not. It's no George R.R. Martin delay.
oh yeah, infinite
Decade.
delay.
Patrick Rothfuss. Should we start naming and shaming fantasy authors?
If we can't kink shame, then we can't do that.
No. Well, We could, but we shan't.
Shan't we?
All right, so before we set off into a gallop of our own, let's pull in the reins and wheel back around for our favorite section of the show, callbacks. In the previous episode, I couldn't quite get the correct name for the race of people from which the Green Man came, but it's the Nym. I sort of danced around it, but it does. Demandred killed a Nym in the River of Souls, albeit it was only the head that was still alive in a cave. It was this like weird, deformed version of a Nym. But Demandred did very much kill it.
Was it maybe like a bonsai?
Yes, Demandred said before he plunged the sword through its head, "Bonsai!" And then
that's a dad joke.
It is, and I mean, it's a good thing. It's a good thing we've started with a very light-hearted dad joke, because now I'm quickly going to quickly tackle the conversation about, did Robert Jordan write Taim as Demandred originally? According to Robert Jordan and Harriet, no, he didn't.
Lies.
But I did a bit of digging, because I feel like I've always had this narrative in my head that he did do it originally and then changed tack along the way. I think we've even alluded to that on the show.
Yeah.
So I found a report from a sort of trusted longtime user of Theoryland and a member of the wider Wheel of Time community, who found in some of Robert Jordan's actual notes the following line: Demandred, hated/feared/despised Lews Therin. Like Lanfear, he plays for larger stakes than most of the others who are trying to stake out worldly kingdoms, and then he will show up claiming to be Mazrim Taim, taking advantage of Rand's amnesty. Boom. Definitive.
Yeah, that's pretty definitive. Yeah.
It is. And then about Dumai's Wells, he wrote that Taim/Demandred showed up. So this is now Robert Jordan's voice writing in his own notes. Demandred showed up not so much because his party wants to free Rand, though that might be a point in their plans. On the other hand, Rand in the hands of the White Tower and thus within Messana's power could still cause one hell of a lot of chaos. But he came to free him because he was learning that the Shadow were moving in. They could not be sure that the Aes Sedai would drive off the Shadow, nor that the Shadow would not kill Rand. And a rescued Rand, pissed at the Aes Sedai, will really be a source of chaos and disunity. So when we read Dumai's Wells later in this book, imagine that being Demandred showing up, freeing Rand because he's afraid that the Shadow are actually going to kill him, and Demandred's orders from the Dark One are to let the Lord of Chaos rule, and he can't do that if he's dead. So he is coming there, Demandred, to save Rand's life, which is pretty fucked up. Also, apparently in his... Oh, so you want to say something, Joe?
No, I'm not going to say anything more on this topic.
In the notes, he also mentions that Asmodean was killed by Demandred. Surprise!
Well, he changed that too.
He did. So the rumor goes that during the Lord of Chaos book signing tour, it was so obvious to people interviewing RJ that Taim was Demandred that RJ decided to change it. It's like, oh shit, they're seeing through my very thin ruse here. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, it's Demandred.
Yeah.
So that's why he changed it. I mean, again, this is all speculation, but this is the rumor within the wider community.
Yeah.
Which would go some ways to answer some of the questions. Like we asked in the previous episode, how long has Taim been channeling if he wasn't Demandred? There's no record in the books about it. He's older than Rand by about 12, 15 years, like you said, Joe, and Rand assumes that he generally would have started channeling around the same time most men do, which is, late teens, early 20s, which is why he assumes that he's been channeling for that long. Don't know why he's not crazy. Lots of weirdness, right? So we've danced around this a little bit. What I couldn't figure out is why Taim would give one of the seals to Rand, even if he was a Dark Friend, even if he's not Demandred and down the track, wouldn't Demandred and every single Dark Friend in Randland want to just break the seal immediately? I mean...
Yeah. But maybe they have orders not to. I don't know. They were ordered to not kill Rand. I mean, surely that would be number one, is kill Rand, is kill the Dragon Reborn as soon as he's born. they've been trying. They've been looking for him for 20 years. And then all of a sudden, no, change it. Let him rule. So maybe it was, hey, oh, no, hang off on the seals. Don't break those yet. Maybe it was in some orders that they got.
Maybe. It's very weird.
No doubt.
We sort of toyed with the idea of maybe Taim is already mad, but maybe his madness is just very subtle. And I just wanted to push back on that idea after listening to the episode again, that is not how the madness is portrayed in the story, right? Like, all of the male madness is supposed to drive them to the point where they are literally destroying everything around themselves. It's not a quiet madness. It's
not an eccentricity.
No. It's not just a voice in his head that he has learned to live with or anything. It's supposed
he
to make
ketchup on his pancakes. Oh, no, too much channeling.
Villy, what you wanted to say something about the previous point?
I mean, at what point would you know that you can break the seal? I mean, the seal is Quendiar, and it's
true.
The dark one has to channel those, like we've assumed now, or we've claimed Blood and Ashes canon
law.
That the seals get targeted sort of one by one, and that's why you've got that feeling of evil resonating from them. But I mean, it would be senseless for them to sit there waiting, like, "Ooh, is it time yet?" 5 minutes.
How about now? Now.
Or maybe they did that in the beginning. They sat there for like 55 years, and it's like, "Fuck this! I'm not breaking any more seals." Like, he can do this all by himself.
It doesn't make any sense. In the last episode, Joe, you asked if this is the seal that Rand breaks at the final battle. I just wanted to say Logan is the one that breaks them, and there are 3 of them. He breaks 3 seals. It's this one, and then the other 2 that Moraine had in that barrel on the wagons. One is from Ruidian, one is from the Great Holding in the Stone of Tyr, and the other one is this one from Taim. And Logan breaks it. They actually get stolen, and they have to steal them back to get them to Rand. It's
remember the seals.
All kinds of seal shenanigans later.
He becomes Logain Sealbreaker. That's what they call him. Do it, Sealbreaker. Like all the Ashramans
really?
standing around.
Are you joking? Was that for real?
No, dead serious.
Wow. Don't remember that at all. Oh, can't wait.
It's rad.
We sort of nitpicked around, like, how long did it take Rand to sense the resonance when who's tested first? Is it Eben Hopwell or Joe Grady? One of them.
Yeah, Eben.
Dharma Flynn.
Dharma Flynn.
Oh, right.
Dharma, yeah. Rand feels the resonance after about 10 minutes, and then Taim in another minute or 2 after that. So Rand beats him to the punch, even though he's just learned how to do it. When we spoke about Bashir saying to Rand he would never need to fight 5 guys with a sword when he can channel, we were quick to agree with Bashir. But when I listened to the episode again, I actually found myself disagreeing, because leaning too hard on channeling meant putting all your eggs in one basket. So, like, what if you can't reach the source for whatever reason, like in Farmadding, something that happens later in the story? Rand is in Farmadding fighting, I think, Ashaman. Isn't that where they try to ambush him? And he fights them with his sword. And luckily he has his sword and is an absolute machine with it, because... So it's a bit short-sighted from Davram Bashir. I'll give him some leniency because he can't channel, so he doesn't know the ins and outs of what it means to be able to channel. But I think it's a good thing that Rand not only uses swordplay as a meditative exercise, but is keeping his skills sharp. When Lan compliments Tam in A Memory of Light, remember we spoke briefly about Lan saying, "I'd long wondered who had handed Rand this Heron Mark blade, and now and whether he'd earned it. And now I know he did." I said it's after Tam leads some kind of charge against the Shadow Spawn, but it's not Tam leading a charge. It's Tam holding the point of a wedge against a swarm of Trollocs and Shadow Spawn. Like, they have to hold a position, and usually the wedge is an attacking formation, but they use it in a defensive thing. And Tam is in the front. He is standing right up front of this wedge. And I went and I read the passage from A Memory of Light, and I literally shed a tear. I literally cried reading just that section. It is unbelievable. So I'm not going to expound on that here. We'll wait till we get there. But I'm misting up now thinking about that passage that I read. It is amazing.
Fucking Tam, man, legend.
Yeah. Wow. We spoke about when this book was published, Phil, when we were wondering, like, how much do they really know about multiple personality disorder? It was first published in 1994, so we knew a fair bit. This is not old. But then I made a terrible, terrible mistake. And I called the movie with Ed Norton and Richard Gere Prime Suspect. It's not what it was called. It was Primal Fear.
Prime Suspect.
So everyone that went... the hordes of people that listen to the show and voraciously consume all media that we mention on here, when they went looking for Prime Suspect and found a Helen Mirren UK cop drama. Sorry, we were talking about the Richard Gere and Ed Norton movie, Primal Fear, which was a good movie.
Like Rotten Tomatoes website visitors just spiked after we released that. They must have been like, wow, all these people are searching.
Okay, we've got a couple of listener contributions, not that many. Firstly, I have to say that when I read a message from a listener called Joe in the show last week for rapping me on the knuckles for being hard on Nynaeve, it was actually Joe, Queen of Swords, who is a regular listener and contributor and a Twitter interactor, but she had left Twitter and contacted me via a different channel, which did not link up for me. So sorry, Joe. And then Kerry filled in a couple blanks for us.
She ripped Roger a new one, didn't she?
No, not this time. She was very kind. She was just letting us know. Remember Pater with the broken nose, who's the Dark Friend? We thought that because he does get killed by the White Cloaks, that even a broken clock is right twice a day, sort of thing. Like they kill a whole bunch. Sooner or later, they're going to kill someone that is a Dark Friend, and in this case, they did. But they didn't kill him for being a Dark Friend. They actually kill him for trying to help Morghese escape.
Potato.
Yeah, he did.
Dark Friend, he did.
Yes. Joe, your suspicions were correct. The White Cloaks do pretend to be Dragonsworn to sow chaos in Altara and Mirundi. And it's Jacob Carradine who's there again. Is
he sober?
Sweating, drunk.
No, he would not be sober. I'm going to say very confidently that he is not in good shape over there. But he is also there under orders from Sammael to find Terangriel and Saangriel and Ungriel. So here's another link to another thing we were wondering about. Why they're not looking for these? He is actually there and told to do it. And just like before, just like caught between his White Cloak orders and his Forsaken orders. That guy is so royally fucked. And that is it for callbacks.
Just a short one.
I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed those callbacks. It's the first and only time I'm going to say that. So make sure it's in the recording.
I live to please. Everyone, mark your calendars. The day Jody enjoyed callbacks. All right, let me do a quick speed recap and then we can get straight into it. Previously on Blood and Ashes, Rand practices the sword against 5 opponents simultaneously while the Andoran royal sycophants look on. Bashir, quote-unquote, tries to kill Rand to show him how much more effective he is using Saidin as opposed to a sword. Then in walks Mazrim Taim, there to take advantage of Rand's amnesty. He begrudgingly agrees to follow Rand rather than strike a deal and gives Rand one of the Dark One seals as a gift. Rand goes a bit mad and almost smashes it on the ground while Lews Therin raves in his mind. But he comes to his senses and takes Taim to the farm where a handful of male channeler hopefuls have gathered with their families. Taim tests a couple of them and is surprised to find they can actually channel. Rand sets him the task of aggressively recruiting male channelers and teaching them to become weapons and fast. He then sets off to Cairhien near the border to Illian, where he meets first with the Terran and Cairhenian nobles to drive home his war plan, which we suspect is merely a feint. He learns that High Lords Darlin, Tadosian, and High Lady Estanda, along with some other rebels, are congregating in Haddon Merk and are directly opposing him. Then he has a meeting with the Aiel clan chiefs, after which he enjoys a quiet dinner and a smoke before sneaking back to Caemlyn and into his bed, trying not to wake Avienda, who is in fact wide awake and on top of his lame deception. And also Rand tells a dad joke. That is everything that happened in the last episode, which brings us now to Chapter 5, called A Different Dance. Take the floor, Willie.
Yes, there's dancing and there's taverns and Matt's back. Matt is in a tavern or an inn, the Inn of the Golden Stag, which is quite aptly named with decorations and such. Matt's doing what Matt does in a tavern, drinking wine. He feels that the wine is coming in quickly, but he might be perspiring it out faster. It is that hot. Very hot, very unpleasant, not a great time. Uh, During this time, they've got some band playing for them. They've got a little bit of live music. The band is not good. It's kind of sort of small town local musicians. The dulcimer is untuned, and they don't really. Matt tries to teach them some songs from his memories, but they're not up to speed with picking up new music either. They kind of just jam what they know, and that's it, what they can do. Matt decides then to flirt with one of the serving girls, Betsy, and he gets her to come for a dance and spins her around on her feet and does a little dance from his many memories. And dance all done, he actually starts off with him having conversation with her. And she basically can't shut up. She talks and talks Matt into a corner. Dorian and Nilician and all the rest of them sort of like laughing at the other end, how this girl is basically talking Matt into a corner. Like, are you Lord? Are you not a Lord? But like, why do you wear it? What's with the scarf? What's with the scar? What's with this? Like, it just keeps blabbering on. Anyway, Matt, after dancing and Betsy and all of that, lives up to his promise that he said he would go do a round and sort of inspect the men. And because now you must remember, Matt is in the town of Maroon.
The town
Cowtown.
of
Maroon.
Castle.
Anyway, so this is a little bit south from Arangil, and they are on the move. They have moved from Kyrian, and they are now marching an army, or Matt is marching an army of 6,000 soldiers to Illian. The soldiers are, moving 6,000 men is no small feat. They will get into mischief. They will get into fights. Will get into fights with themselves because they are a mixed match of people. You've got Terrans, you've got Kyrenian, you've got deserters from other places, you've got refugees, and as they're going, they are also recruiting. And we'll see as Matt moves now through the town / their camp that they are actively even singing soldier songs there about terrible the life as a soldier is. But these refugees, they look at it and like, can't be worse than what I'm going through right now. So I might as well just join this
Sounds
band
awesome.
of the Red Hand.
Yeah.
He, as he's walking, he gets all these rumors, and I think it was from Dorian that there's even a rumor that Rand was in town yesterday. And with that, Matt almost has a little stumble because Rand was actually in town the day before. And it turns out Rand comes and meets Matt with little gateways that open up in his chambers wherever Matt's staying. And Matt crapping himself every time, like having to dive and knock his, like,
As
what
you
the
would.
hell? He's not used to this. But yes, Matt was visited by Rand again to discuss the plan. And Matt's like, look, the plan didn't change, but I think Rand is so emphasizing having this direct link with Matt because of what Matt on the ground can pick up and add in and say, hey, this might not work. But the whole army moving to Illian is a bit of a red herring for Sammael, as it's a ruse, it's a setup. But
We know what a red heron means.
Only we do.
Jeez, Willie.
Okay, all right. Now, Estian arrives with news. There's big news. There is a ship, and everyone's like, "Ooh, there's a river. There's gonna be ships," and it's like, no, it is a big ship. It's like there's sails. It's massive. And Matt has a little look in it. And truth be told, it is a big ship. It's the Atha Miera, and Athaanmere, the sea folk,
Mm-hmm.
and they are tying up sails and busy, and Matt can see that they are half men, half woman, but they're not coming ashore on their side of the bank. They sort of doing a quick pit stop, literally drop off and run of what Matt, through his memories, then can pick up as a wave mistress and a sword master, which is the highest rank that you can get on a
Second
boat.
highest.
The
On a
second
boat,
highest.
yes.
On
Out
a
of
boat,
the
the highest, but
hierarchy of the they're
and
like just below the
as soon as this people were taken to shore, the little boat that rowed them there is straight back on, sails drop, and off they go. Like they are 900 miles away from the ocean. This is very peculiar indeed, which
Mm-hmm.
means they would have gone past Tyr and up through the fingers of the dragons, and they basically going up to Tarvalon, perhaps, because there's a fork in the river there
Shrug.
after. But anyway, strange occurrence. Matt, in that time, had asked Dorian to, not a Dorian, Estian, to get rowers and get a boat. I need to get onto that, but he missed that boat. That boat has sailed, literally.
that ship has sailed.
Now that ship has sailed.
He missed the boat.
I have missed out, obviously. Before then, there is a very big event. And
Mm.
Matt, while walking through and inspecting inn after inn and thing after thing and camp after camp and running through the difficulties of managing a big moving army like this, there's a commotion. And instead of Matt just letting which turns out there's a roster of rotation of the men having to police themselves. And any damages caused by any of the soldiers has to be paid for by the men that's in charge of looking after and keeping the peace. So they're quick to hand out the cudgels to the head when things get
The Red Arms.
the red arms. That's right. That was the name. But Matt decides to push through the crowd and get to this commotion. And turns out this commotion is two lords, hunters of the horns. Um, I don't even need to know their names. It's a once and a
Irrelevant.
irrelevant. But they are manhandling a little boy because the boy touched the one man's horse. And he said, I should snap your neck for this, you little peasant scum. And Matt's like, there'll be no snapping of necks over here. And a little bit of hoo-ha, and Matt takes his Ashandari with the handle side or with the shaft side and takes this man from behind and smacks him. I don't know, was it from behind or the front? Can't really figure
I
out.
don't think it was from behind. He addresses them.
Straight from the front, and he hits his testicles all the way into his belly, and he falls into a little heap on the ground. That we all can relate to, seeing as all of us been hit in the nuts by a cricket ball at some point in our lives.
We've all been hitting the nuts by each other.
That. As this happens, his fellow lordling or lord there decides to draw his sword. And as he draws his sword, he doesn't even get it out an inch. And he cops one on the side of the head. Not hard enough to break his skull, but hard enough for him to know that he's been decked quite well.
Just to ring his bell.
Yeah, just he rang his bell quite loudly. Their manservants, Piedric, whatever his name is, he rocks up pleading for his lords, and Matt's like, no, you are going to get them out of town before sunset. I am not going to tolerate men trying to snap little boys' necks on my watch, type of thing. So the little boy pipes up. He's not a little boy. He's 9 years old. And Matt says to him, well, what are you doing? Like getting on stallions at the age of 9. I mean, you could be crushed and no one would even find you in the hay on the floor, like it's trampled in. It's like, well, it's not a stallion, it is a gelding. And Matt's like, this little lad knows horses. I like a little frisky little lad. But anyway, dives into like, where's your parents? What's the whole lot? Olver is now introduced to us. So Olver is an ugly boy with a big mouth and big ears. He's dirty and he stinks. He's 9 years old. His mom died from sickness and he had to bury her on the road. So they're refugees. What they don't specify, or he probably doesn't know what sickness she died of. So she got the fever. She got the black lung or something. His dad was killed by the Shaidar dogs. So Matt strikes an immediate liking into him. He tells Dorian to take him back to the inn, give him a bath, get him fed, and Oliver's none too stoked about having to get a bath. But either way, it's Matt says to him, like, look, you'll get looked after. Just go with this bloke.
And Dorian is like, what? Yeah. You want me to do what? He's staring, gaping at Matt like, why?
I don't want to look after a kid. I don't want a kid. What is this? Tough. Deal with it.
Deal with it. All right. So with all this now done, after that, Matt had the incident with the vessel that sailed in. I got my two events just a little out of sequence there. So that all went down. They missed the ship, literally, and then moved on back to the inn. It's now evening time. The dancing is going well. The beers are flowing. The music is average, but the wine is flowing. So Matt doesn't care. And he has got Betsy all to himself. She's dancing with him and only him. And she serves him and only him. And the inn's mistress has sort of made her now available for just Matt. But every time Matt tries and kisses her, she throws the cheek, playing either really, really innocent or really hard to get. By the end of the night, which is now the wee hours of the morning, probably I'd say about 2-3 a.m., Matt is like, he grabs Betsy over and he gives her an Andoran crown gold and says, buy yourself something pretty, and he's going to go to bed. He then tells all the lordlings, Talmains, Diedred, Nalisian, Dorian, and Estian, that's all flowing wine and having a party, that, hey, FYI, at sunrise we're moving. We're going south. So, and they protest heavily, like, no, look, when are we going to sleep? He's like, well, I'm going to go and sleep now, and you'll wake me in 2 hours, and we'll be ready to move. Like Matt taking no prisoners, taking charge.
Yeah, I think they say, we won't get any sleep, and Matt goes, I will for 2 hours. Come wake me up.
It's delegation. He's really getting this leadership thing.
Yeah,
that is done. Daybreak comes, and 6,000 men are on the move. And that is
the band of the Red Hand.
End of the chapter.
Oh, I think the worst thing that I took from that chapter was that feeling of having only slept 2 hours after drinking wine all night.
You can feel it. Yeah,
I was like, Matt, rather just don't sleep. Don't do it, man.
Push through. Go have that Jaeger bomb and push through. Yeah, anything you wanted to call out there, Joe?
Just that. just that.
I like that Matt chose that inn because, according to him, it's near the dead center of town. So, tactical choice. He makes a comment that usually fights were taken outside before spilling blood. Not always, even with the Red Arms. So, like, even with the Red Arms around, there are still fights that actually spill blood indoors. But I'm starting to form a good picture of all of his the band's lords now, right? Like, we met them fighting outside Kyrian. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to keep reminding you guys. I don't know if you need it as much as I do, but I'm going to keep reiterating who they are. And
yes.
okay,
Because
cool.
I get confused between who the
They
Tarians
flow
are
together.
and who the Kyrenians are.
Exactly.
Like, and what's the difference between Estian and
Idorian.
Idorian? Like, those two, I always mix them up.
Yeah.
Well, they're both
cool.
Terrans,
So, I mean,
but Estian is the potato and Edorian is the jerk.
yes. Idorian is not as much of a jerk. Idorian is the guy that at the card table was trying to control Estian. He was telling Estian to calm down, stop drinking, don't say that stuff about the farmers' wives, or farmers' daughters and the fishermen's daughters. Estian was the real jerk.
Ah, okay.
Potato Head. Mr. Potato
Yes,
Head.
Potato
himself.
Head, son of High Lord. Insert Estian's dad's name here.
Yeah, the only one
Alright.
of that group that's not a lordling that worked his way up sort of to that stature through the army is Diedrit.
Yes, he's a commoner.
I know that. Yeah, he leads the spears,
The
all right?
infantry.
The infantry.
the pikemen.
Guys, all right. The pikemen.
Yeah.
That's it.
Telmanes is a Kyrenian.
Mm-hmm.
He's a noble, but he styles himself as a soldier. So he's got a shaved head. The front of his head is shaved and powdered like the soldiers. So
but there's
he's
a lot
the
of
guy
those
that's
lords
always
that do
described as a
that. They've
coiled whip.
adopted. Ah.
He's the
Coiled
very
whip guy.
self-serious one. Telmanes here, when Matt's busy trying to hook up with Betsy and Dared and Nalessian are sort of laughing in the background, eventually even Telmanes is heard laughing. Like Matt's is like, even Telmanes is losing his composure because Telmanes is the super, super serious one, the one that's always described as a coiled whip. I loved that specific section as well with Dared, who is a commoner, like you said, Vil, and Nalessian, who's a noble Terran. They are
They're laughing
Kyrenian
together
and
having a
Terran
laugh.
and noble and peasant, but they're laughing together. And I think, don't correct me on this, I'm not going to look back, but I'm pretty sure it's the two of them that are also singing hand in, like arm in arm, after the battle at Kyrian.
Yes.
Singing Jack of the Shadows, which was also noteworthy because it was the noble and the peasant. One of the descriptors is later Nalessian and Dared seem to be choking to death. as they're laughing at Matt. Like Matt's like, these guys sound like they're choking to death as they're sniggering and chortling at Matt's failed attempts to make inroads with Betsy. Lots of laughing at Matt here because he says from now on he was going to watch where he put his feet. No more jumping into things without thinking what may come of it. Really, Matt?
I don't believe you.
You think so? It was also interesting at one point Matt thinks if he could just figure out what to do about the Horn of Valir. On previous reads, I don't think I picked up that Matt's not actually linked to the Horn at this stage. Already. Yeah. He's already hung from the tree. He has no link to the Horn of Valir, but he doesn't know.
I think it wasn't the balefire that undid it because he's been balefire.
No, it's not. It's the hanging from the tree. Matt specifically asks the heroes of the Horn, and Arthur Hawkwing says to him, no, not that time, another time. But also, ironically, you were also saved by Rand that time.
Okay.
This I can say definitively. How wonderful it feels to be able to
You
answer
said it with
a
a lot of
question.
confidence. I'm fully
I did.
convinced.
We've spoken about it before on the show. Like, was it that one or the Balfour one? And it's because it had happened before, actually, already in Shadow Rising. Just a quick one on the Ashandari. It's from the Finns, right? Obviously, but apparently the blade is good old Aes Sedai work from the Age of Legends. Because he mentions here the Ravenmark blade is Aes Sedai work, which will, again, repeating like it'll never blunt and blah, blah, blah. But the inscription on the shaft is, thus is our treaty written, thus is agreement made. Thought is the arrow of time, memory never fades. What was asked is given, the price is paid. So the Finns had assembled this weapon with an Aes Sedai blade that they acquired somehow, somewhere, sometime, with this other shaft that they had obviously made specifically for Matt. Which is interesting. Like you always think of it as this is the weapon that it always was, but it's not.
No.
It's comprised of parts from
Because
different
there's no
origins.
way that the Aes Sedai would have made it with that saying on. It's
No,
specifically and
it's
unique
very
to
specific
Matt.
to Matt.
I assume because it's called an Ashandari, like he knows this weapon. Like this was a
He
whole
does.
weapon that maybe they got as a gift from someone else who was inside there, or they stole because someone came in with iron and wasn't supposed to, or whatever story, and they just engraved the shaft. That's how I was thinking. It's not like a weapon they constructed.
Or
Because it is a weapon. This style of weapon
is.
does exist,
Yes.
and Matt recognizes it.
And the blade is for that purpose. It's
Yes.
just either they had a shaft that they engraved for Matt, or they made a shaft for it to combine with this blade to give to Matt. Either way, it's much of a muchness, really. They had to do some work on it to make it specific to Matt, because it's also the passage, like, I mean, specifically, memory never fades.
Yes.
Is Matt, right? Like, that's his thing. Then the red arms are actually, like, their whole forearm is red. The red cloth that they've wrapped around it is from the wrist to the elbow. I didn't remember that at all. I think I've sort of conflated it with the spears of the dragon, with just like the band around their head. Like, I always pictured the red arms was just like a cloth tied around their upper arm or something like that.
No, it's
but
the image that you get with
forearm
military police. Military police just wears a
Yes,
band
exactly.
on their upper arm.
Exactly.
This is
Exactly. Yes.
the elbow down to the wrist.
To the wrist.
And
yeah.
it also,
Which is
the
great.
guys that was on duty
looks
on that
way
particular occasion are the not the footmen. It was the cavalry.
Right.
And they were all dressed up in their more fancier clothes, and the red things were squashing their frilly cuffs.
Yes, but they still do it, which is cool. When we were talking about Edoran before, I mean, like I said, I went and I double-checked that is my assumption on who this person is and what their role is playing, what role they're playing here, is that still correct? Edoran is also the guy that made the bet with Rand about how quickly the Aiel can reach Cairhien from that little town. When Rand was sitting on that bridge and Estienne and Edoran came there with the two lesser Cairhenian nobles, and they were talking about, like, what the Shaidar are doing and how bad things are. And Rand said, okay, cool, the Aiel will be there in 7 days or whatever it is. And he was like, oh, what would you like to, was it like 100 gold crowns or something huge?
Yeah.
And
No,
Rand's
just
like,
like 1,000.
I don't have 2 pennies to rub together. And that's when I think Siuan or one of the maidens is like, don't worry, we'll stake you in this bet. You are the
With
Dragon
your
Reborn,
own
and
money.
you get, yes, you get a part of the fifth that I take. You know, like, you taxing all of us basically, so you have the money. Don't worry about it. But I just wondered, is that bet ever resolved?
No, not that we know about at this point in time.
Let's keep an eye out if Rand ever crosses paths with the Dorian again. If he ever goes, hey buddy, cough up. We meet another one of the, I don't know if he's a red arm in this section, but he is, because I mean, that's a floating title, but he's certainly one of the devout band of the Red Hand members, because he's got the like a hawk tattoo on his face, a guy by the name of Haran. And I was like, okay, that name rings a bell. I've definitely read about Haran before. So here's a quick rundown of what Hanan's role in the story is. He and 11 other Red Arms accompany Matt as they leave Saladar for Ibudar. So when Matt spends all that time in Ibudar, Hanan is with him. And after being attacked by a golem, Hanan is the only surviving Red Arm in Ibudar. So that golem destroys them, but Hanan survives with Matt. And then Hanan goes with Matt to search for Olver and is still in Ibudar when the Seanchan attack. And he later moves into the Terrasen Palace with Matt. So Hanan is like close to Matt. He's going to be around a lot. He, along with the rest of Matt's group, joins and travels in Valen Lucas' circus as a cover after they all escape Ibudar. And then, do you remember Renna, the Suldan, that also crosses their path and we said runs away? So after Renna flees, Hanan is the one that kills her with a crossbow bolt just before she reaches Coromon, which I think is the Seanchan. She tries to rejoin the Seanchan. And Hanan kills her, shoots her in the back with the crossbow. Go Hanan. He also rides with Matt into that cursed village of Hinderstap and is attacked by the crazed villagers when nightfall comes, and the group only just manages to escape the village and wait the night away before entering the village again at daybreak to find that everyone is back to normal, which is also like quite a big event in the story, because Willie, you won't notice, but it's used later in the last battle. They used that village and its very specific curse, that bubble of evil. So Hanan is there for all that stuff, and here he's just like another soldier. Like, he has a quick interaction with Matt and moves along. But remember his name, I will remind you. Another quick comment here about Estienne. Estienne was always eager, but learned slowly. A bad combo, and the reason he bears multiple bruises from the innkeeper.
Yes.
And I remember this is the same guy that had some pretty wild ideas about what he's entitled to in terms of a fisherman's daughter and a farmer's daughter. So I'm not a fan of Estienne. I think RJ tries to paint him as a guy that is sort of coming around, because there's often mention of his armor is like dented. He's actually seen action now. He's not just a High Lord in tier that's sitting, back in the stone playing cards and getting drunk all the time. He's also not as fat as he used to be. I think it's mentioned that he's trimming down and stuff. But yeah, don't like Estienne. It's going to take a lot for me to warm up to him. I love the reverse psychology that Matt uses on Olver. If someone told him he might not be allowed to take a bath, suddenly he's like, oh, I'm not allowed to? Now I'm going to take a bath. And it's Matt applying the exact same things that will work on him.
Yeah.
On Olver. I think Olver acts as like a real mirror for Matt, without Matt realizing, I don't think. But for us, it's fun to read Matt having to deal with a little Matt. Matt has not only read Comadrin's book, he has met Comadrin after losing a battle to him. So do you remember we spoke briefly about this? It's like Comadrin was our equivalent of Sun Tzu's, Art of War, like the battle commander. It was just cool. Like Matt says offhandedly, something I've read in a book once. Yeah, not only did he read the book, he met the man himself after he had actually lost a battle to him. So,
and that book no longer exists. No one else knows what he's talking about.
No, it's all in his head. He thinks to himself, at least he had not delivered the speech in the old time. He usually managed to avoid doing that. So he's still doing it. He's still sometimes slipping into the old time. And then the chapter ends with him going, for once, everything was going to work out the way he expected. Has there ever been a worse setup for failure?
But he's pushing the band now. He wants to cover 35 miles a day. That's the eel goes 24 miles if they're doing... He's pushing 6,000 men really hard. And at that pace, it's going to take them a month, 30 days to get there. Yeah. Which means they're like 1,600 Ks away from Illian. That's a vast distance to track.
So Rand's message to him was like, leave suddenly and early to make it look like you're trying to surprise someone, but also make enough noise so that everyone knows it's happening.
Yeah.
It's this weird fine line that they're trying to walk. And I mean, I can't see the plan yet. I mean, obviously by design, we're not supposed to know what the plan is, but so Matt is marching this army towards Illian. Rand also has a massive force on the border already of Illian. So the huge Aiel and Terran and Kyrenian forces already on the border. So they're ahead of where Matt is. Matt's still busy catching up to them.
Vyramon is in that unit.
I just wonder which way Rand is going to send them. Like, is he going to use a gateway or something and send them in from the side to flank them, or come in from the other side? Don't know. Remains to be seen. But before we get to that, we have to go through some other story stuff, which is going to be hard. I didn't like this. I like learning about the Forsaken, but man, this is rough going. This is not scheming. This is, it's no way to church it up like torture porn, right? Like it's pretty wild. So Joe, why don't you do us all a favor and give it your best shot to deliver it in a nice, easy, soft blow.
No. Right. Well, it's 8 pages and 1,409 words, so I'll try and be brief.
Okay.
Yes, so chapter 6, was it? What was it? What's the name of this chapter?
Oh, yes, I didn't even introduce it. It's chapter 6. It's called Threads Woven of Shadow.
Yes. Anyway, it's Sammael, Graendal, and Semirhage, all the three of them. So we have an entire chapter dedicated to 3 Forsaken. So it's a unique insight, although not very pretty.
They play such a big
times,
role in the story. They can have their time in the light. Not stop being like that.
In the light. Sure.
Yes, stick up for them, Vil.
All right, so we start with Sammael as he very carefully steps through a gateway into Graendal's lair, or as she was known in the Age of Legends, Camarilla Maridum Nindar. They all have these weird names. So as she, but he keeps on to Saidin, of course. He doesn't want to let go of that. He doesn't trust this woman as far as he can throw her. She is in Arad Daman. She's disguised as the Lady Basine or Basene. I don't know how you want to pronounce that one. So I'll be going through this as well. I've done some background as well, and I'll just throw it in here to keep everyone up to date about what's been going on. All right, so she has been giving Sammael some info on what happened with the meeting that she had with Demandred, Semirhage, and Rosanna. I think the last one, Semirhage never turned up. They were late. She was late or whatever, and there was some words said. So she apparently as well had encouraged Sammael not to attend that meeting. Like, he was supposed to be there, is the way I read it. But anyway, he was not there, so she is trying to give him the information she wants to give him from that meeting. And he knows it. He's there to get some more information. So she is in her palace, of course, with her usual menagerie of sex slaves playing harps or some shit. Has anybody ever seen the film Caligula?
What film?
No.
Caligula. No? It's a Roman emperor, one of the most depraved that ever lived. Anyway, this film, if you're going to watch it late at night with no one else around, it is, you brace yourself. All right? Okay. Very, very, very hardcore. But anyway, that movie reminds me of this scene, like where you walk in and there's just these like naked people in indoor baths and fountains and, playing harps and rubbing each other and all kinds of shit going on.
Reminds me of that Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise movie.
Yes.
What was that?
Very much like that as well.
What was the name of that movie?
Eyes
Wide Shut.
Yeah. So, yeah, along those lines. But if you watch Caligula, this is exactly the scene. You trust me. Mm-hmm. So we learned that she used to be a healer of sorts. She was like a psychiatrist, basically, in the Age of Legends. People that could not be healed with the one power were sent to her, and she would, with mental problems, with emotional issues, and she would be able to help them out. And she was like no one else. She was in the top of her field. She turned to the Dark One before Sammael, actually. And she was the one that actually accepted his pledge and then took him to Shai'l Ghul to swear his oaths and all of that. Back then, she was the master and he was the student, so to speak. But things have changed. Even though he was a big general back then, he still had to be, submissive to her. And now he's done with that. It's been 3,000 years. That part is done. So she introduces him to some of her pets, obviously. She's got the Damani King's brother, his sister, and his daughter there. She's got, keeping it in the family, basically. Everyone, of course, goes without saying, is compelled out of their minds. She's also got some Sharans there. This is our first insight into the Sharan way of life and what people are called and what they do. They got the Ayad, and it's a pretty deep explanation. I'll just gloss over it, but they basically got the Siuan and the Shabotai, which is like the two emperors, the two channelers that are married together. They rule for 7 years, then they magically die. It's weird, yeah. So basically, after 7 years, they just kill them, is what we learn. Because they marry the channelers together, and it's all kinds of weird things. Anyway, she explains some of that to Sammael while he's there. Sammael is quick to reason out that she's doing all this to distract him. Like, she's trying to tell him about Shara, so that he thinks that she's interested in it, and that he'll be distracted by it and go and look for something there or something. And I'm thinking he's realized that she isn't, but, Demandred's there. So kind of you should have paid attention as well to Shara, but he dismisses it immediately because he thinks it's just a trap from her part. He doesn't really care about that. He knows that the first strike from the Shadow is going to be in this land. This is where the last battle's going to happen. He's not going anywhere. He's a general, and a very, very efficient and famous general, and this is where he's going to be staying, and this is where he's going to be fighting. So he tells her that she should be careful with all of these famous pets, like it's the king's brother and daughter and sister and all that stuff. It's like one day one of your guests is going to come in and recognize one of them, and when they leave, they're going to come back with an army. And she thinks that's very funny because, of course, she would never let anybody see anything she doesn't want them to see. And she quickly changes into the guise that she's using like a mask of mirrors to show this like elderly or aging lady, the lady Basine, and everyone else that comes in there only sees what she wants to. So he doesn't need to worry his pretty little head about that. She's hosted the King Assalam's supporters. She's hosted Dragonsworn. So she's having a right old time there, trying to manipulate, influence events from her side and in her disguise. He tries to get some more information out of her, but she's already told him everything she's going to tell him about that meeting that she had. But she also thinks that he wants to know more about Lews Therin. He always wants to know about Lews Therin, or as he prefers, Graendal Thor. There's a thing there that she is constantly baiting him by calling him Lews Therin, knowing that old Sammael doesn't believe that at all. He just thinks that Lews Therin is long dead. Rand is not him specifically reincarnated. He's the next dragon. Yes, I get it, but he's a lucky dragon, a jumped up farm boy, blah, blah, blah. The usual arrogant crap that gets the Forsaken into trouble. Graendal is not so convinced. She thinks that he is dangerous. I mean, for fuck's sakes, look at all the dead Forsaken. Everyone that's gone up against him is now dead. Like, you can't dismiss that, but he is very dismissive of Rand. Sammael used to tell them that he believed that there was a battle between the Dark One and the Dragon. It happened countless times before, as we know, but she's explaining it, well, he's thinking about that at that time. And that some of those variations, that the dragon actually turned to the shadow, and that freaks him out as well, because the possibility that the Dark One would actually want Rand as nameless and not him is not something that he's going to put up with. Like, he wants to be nameless. But of course, only after everyone else is dead. Because he's always just assumed that whoever's going to be nameless is going to be the only guy, the only one of the chosen. I threw that in there for you, Willie. That's going to be left. That's who's going to be rising up. He asks her directly about Asmodean, Lanfear, and Moghedien. And she tells him she knows as much as he does, which is not true, because we do know that she took care of old Asmo there. Unless you prefer to go with Robert Jordan's previous notes, where it was Demandred. But no, anyway, so she just straight up lies. Ooh, surprise, surprise. She tells him that she thinks Rand killed them all. So she is just planting seeds, misdirection. She is giving him all little, like, she's whispering under her breath the whole time and things. We'll talk about that in a minute. So rumor suggests that Rand did kill Lanfear in Cairhien, which is sort of true. That's sort of what happened. That's how it began, at least. But Sammael doubts that, and he's certain that she has been aiding Rand from the start. And I was like, well, he's right about that. And that she sent the Trollocs to find his Trollocs in the Stone of Tyr, which we learned later in this chapter is not true either. He fucking hates Rand. The hate he has for Rand really shines through in this chapter. We get to see it from his point of view. He has one line in this chapter, which is, his only regret was that Lews Therin had not left a grave for him to spit on. Like, wow. Okay. Not a fan. Graendal is trying to point out this whole time, like, how dangerous Rand is by listing all the Forsaken who have died confronting him. Like Balthamel, Agenor, Ishamael, Belal, Ravin, Lanfear, Asmodean, even if you don't want to believe those last two. And probably Moghedien too, because nobody knows where the fuck she is. She's also gone. So that's 8 out of 13. And we're in book 6, like at the beginning of book 6. First 5 books out of 14. 8 are out of play at the moment, out of commission for whatever reason. Most are dead.
Yeah.
Others have been reborn. Others are captured.
Chamber of Pain.
Yeah. So, like, she is very, very much afraid. She likes this immortality thing. She doesn't want to give it up. She also wants to be nameless. So she's going to be very careful. So that leaves Sammael in Illian, Graendal here in Arad Doman, Semirhage, who we know is in Seanchan, Demandred, who is in Shara, or possibly the Black Tower, and Masada, who is in the White Tower. So those are like an update for everyone who's trying to follow what the hell is happening with the Forsaken.
The Chosen.
No, Chosen Schmosion. So this whole time, like I said, during this conversation, she's been muttering things under her breath, knowing that he is still holding on to Saidin and that he's going to be able to hear her. She's not stupid. Like at one point she whispers, "I like them tall," referring to Rand, knowing that he hates that
because he's
not
a
as
short
tall as
little man.
Yeah.
He's not that short, actually. He's only like a head shorter than Rand, which
makes him short.
Is not that. In comparison to Lews Therin and to Rand, the two people he hates the most in the world. So it really gets on his tits, and she knows that, so of course she whispers it. Later on, she whispers that always some excuse for your failures, referring to Lanfear sending Trollocs against his and aiding Rand, like he could have killed him then. And she's like, he's got some excuse. And he hears that too, and that pisses him off. Now she's straight up telling him that Lews Therin has a massive army. He's coming for you. Like the way she says it, like, oh boy, you're in trouble now. And he's thinking to himself, like, I've got Root's exit plans in place, just in case. Of course, that's prudent. But hearing her speak like that pisses him off. Like, oh, you're going to need those escape plans because you're fucked now. So she is manipulating him hard, trying to goad him into attacking Rand directly, because that way she can get rid of both of them and be nameless herself. So the old interplay between the Forsaken is alive and well. Like the orders are, let their Lord of Chaos rule. She doesn't want that, though. Of course, she doesn't want Rand around. And if she can use Sammael to attack him directly, then he can either kill Rand or they can both die. Or if he does kill Rand, then the Dark One will punish Sammael. He'll be out of the picture. It's a win-win for her. This is all sounding great for her. But Sammael is not afraid of Rand, though. He still won't believe that he can be defeated by this sheep herder and blah, blah, blah. He's carrying on about all of that. At one point he uses the word probably, and this is the ignorance coming through again. He says something about on the lines of like, oh, L4 probably believes most of what we take for granted is impossible to do by his standards. Like, he probably believes that, and he probably thinks that, and it's like, that's not how a general should be thinking. You shouldn't be working on what you believe is probably true of someone's thoughts. So his arrogance and hatred of Lews/L4 is blinding him. But Graendal's like, listen, we got to stick together more than ever if we're going to survive. So he tells her, like, okay, cool, you think that's a good idea, let's link together then. And silence, because that would mean that she would have to agree to the link, but because it's only the two of them, a man and woman, he would have control, and he could be the only one to unlink them when they're done. So she's like, no thanks. And Sammael's like, yeah, that's what I thought. Back to business as usual then, of trying to stab each other in the back.
Yeah.
She tells him that Demandred warns him to be careful. I was like, no, he didn't. Demandred never said anything. So she's inventing shit, trying to goad him again. So this makes him mad, and he's like, well, you can tell him that I said I know what he's up to. You could tell him to be careful. I'm like, dude, you're so easily manipulated. Stop falling for all of these traps. She's good. I'll give her that. Graendal changes the subject. She's like, all right. All this like threats and fighting is tiresome. Let's listen to some sex slave music a little bit. And she tells him more about the Sharans. And there's a line here about like, oh, so
he hates it.
He doesn't like, yeah. Another thing. And then she talks about, he says like, oh, so they bind themselves and something. There's something about a binding. Did you guys catch what was going on there and what a binding is? Or is it something we need to discuss? Because it went over my head.
No, what was the
he
context?
referring to the Sharans? Because like after 7 years, they just die. And he says, "Oh, do they use a binding?" Is like
they kind of have a type of betrothal, but it must be something to do with the power. And after 7 years, the ruling one hands over to the other partner, and the then ruling one is died. Mysteriously, in air quotes. But
is it like a...
And then that one, so you basically, what I understand is you sit for 14 years as 2IC and then as the leader. And when you're in your 7 years as a leader, you take a new partner. And after 7 years, you die and hand over to that one, and that one takes a new partner for 7 years. And so it rolls on from male to female to male to female, or I don't know, maybe male to male or female to female. It doesn't stipulate.
Yeah, it's still unclear, but I think what I'm trying to find out is about this binding. Is that why they die? Because it's a thing with the power. They're bound with the power for 7 years, and when that clock runs out, you just die.
No, it just sounds like it's your end of term, so you get stabbed in the back. Et tu, Brute.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so no one knows.
No, maybe we should do that whole Shara.
We need to do a Sharan deep dive.
Yeah,
what's it?
Anybody
who's listening to this, If you know what all this binding thing about the Sharans is about, let us know. Send us a message, send us a voice note, all those kind of things. Thank you. So anyway, she baits him one last time about maybe you should abandon Illian before Lews Therin kills you, go set up shop somewhere else, and that gets him all mad again. And tells her, like, look, I got shit to do, I gotta go. He opens the gateway and slices one of her pets in half. It's like, well, brutal dude. And then he just tells her, like, listen, the next time we have a meet, you come to Illian, and I'm done, and leaves. Once he's gone, we swap over to Graendal's point of view. She's musing over how well she's manipulated him. And that was rather successful. Like, he's pretty transparent. He's not an idiot, but she thinks that she's got him where she wants him. She thinks about how he's almost sexy enough to be one of her pets. Yes,
the psychiatrist.
She's like, she mentions, she's manipulated far more complicated minds than his in her day. But she thinks as well, like, as he leaves, like, with his golden beard and golden hair, that he's almost sexy enough to be one of her pets if you had let Semirhage heal that scar on his face. So apparently the Semirhage used to be this awesome healer back in the day, and still to this day can do things that none of the Forsaken can do, that no one else can do. So
why is he holding onto the scar? Is it because Lews Therin gave it to him? Like a reminder.
Indeed. He wants a reminder of that son of a bitch. Like he needs anything else.
Keep him angry all the time.
His hate is
thousands of years.
Thousands of years. Well, 3,000 years was a dreamless sleep. So before that, and he's just picked up right where he left off, basically. But she has surmised that he is frantic and has trapped himself in a box, one he'll most likely die in. Yep. It's pretty spot on. Like, he's cornered himself. He has trapped himself now in Illian, and he's not going to give it up, even if it costs him his life. Like, he's just blinded by his hate and revenge for Lews Therin. She believes, like we've mentioned before, Rand must be killed. But of course, that goes against the Dark One's orders of let the Lord of Chaos rule, so it's better to get Sammael to do it, and then she can step in and pick up all the pieces.
She's got a great plan, man. Let all of these other Forsaken get themselves killed and face Rand, and at the end of the day, she's going to be the only one alive, and she'll be nameless. Look, I don't have to get my hands dirty.
I don't think she's the only Forsaken with this plan.
No.
Like, Sammael is not. He doesn't have this plan. His plan is to fight Randall Thor in open combat and kill him. Like, a dumb plan. But I think the other Forsaken probably have very similar plans as well. To let the other ones die off, get them killed by the Dark One, killed by Rand, killed by each other, play them against each other, and then step in. That's
the remaining ones anyway.
Yes, exactly. The 5 that remain.
Yeah.
So she's figured out somehow from the last Forsaken social that Missana is in the tower. I don't recall how that happened, because Missana got angry that Semirhage wasn't there, and she said something, and that made her figure out, like, oh, you're in the White Tower. I don't know how, but anyway, that's what happened. But she doesn't yet know where Semirhage is or where Demandred is. So we know
both
where she
very
is.
far away.
Far, far away. That's why you don't know. And apparently those 3, Missana, Semirhage, and Demandred, have been working together since before the War of Power. They're old buddies. They used to know each other back in the day, and then turned to the Dark One, and then still work together. But of course, they've got knives ready to stab each other in the back, like all of the Forsaken do. Of course, you got to keep them around. So just then, she hears a servant enter, and old Rodel Iturralde is there to see the Lady Basine. Rodel! How do you pronounce his surname? I would love to hear Willie and Moritz's renditions.
No.
Iturralde.
Iturralde? Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Willie, what you got?
No. Eteralde.
Aw, you guys are boring. So anyway, he's there. He's come to speak because, of course, he doesn't know that she's a Forsaken. She is the Lady Basine, or whatever her name is, and he's got some meeting with this important lady. Before she goes off to meet him in her disguise, she puts on her little mask of mirrors. She thinks of how no one knows about her visit to the Pit of Doom, Later on, we hear Semirhage speak about the same thing. So all of them have been called individually. We saw in the prologue of Demandred being taken there, being summoned there. So they've all been summoned one by one, given their orders, and she has been all but promised the position of Nameless. And he's promising everybody that position, girl. Don't get your hopes up.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it's Moradin.
Yeah, it's none of you. Yeah, so they are playing. They're trying to manipulate each other, and the Dark One's manipulating them all. So anyway, that's how we leave it. We don't get to see old Rodell or hear what they have to say because we jump over to Semirhage's point of view. She is in some dungeon-like place. I don't know where she is. We know that Graendal is in Aradowan. We know that Sammael is in Illian, but we don't know where Semirhage is in this specific moment. She's just in some underground, dark, dungeony place. Could be in Sean-Chan, but it could be literally anywhere.
They can travel, so it could be anywhere.
Yeah, literally. So she is torturing an Aes Sedai named Cabriana Mecandes, who, FYI, is a badass. She was Blue Aja, and she was actually the Aes Sedai that escorted Moraine and Siuan up to the Blue Aja living quarters when they were raised to the Blue Aja as full Aes Sedai. So she goes way back as well. I say she's badass because during the torture, she also says to Semirhage in her face, "I spit in the milk of your mother, dark friend." like, not before she's getting tortured, during the torture. She can feel the pain. She knows that this is a black. She asks, "Are you Black Aja? Are you dark? Are you a dark friend?" Then she starts channeling. She realizes she's being channeled at, so she knows it's a channeler. And she's still just... I kind of get the feeling like she's got to be like Latin, like a Latina. Like this, and the milk of your mother. Like, I spit in the milk of your mother.
I shit on the milk of your mother.
Like, just imagine her saying it in that accent. It's classic. The info, by the way, that Semirhage gets from her here is what she passes on to Arangar, who is Balthamel reborn, who poses as Halima and then gets into Saladar. So the information that Halima has in Saladar, she gets from this interrogation. She tells Halima, tells the Aes Sedai when she gets there that Cabriana died in a fall, but Cabriana has two buddies in Saladar who I don't believe this shit, and they start investigating. That's when Halima kills them with the one power, channeling as a male, which leads to that whole investigation, which eventually leads to her being discovered. So it's all a chain of events that starts here.
Cabriana she also indirectly plays her role in exposing Halima.
Exactly.
I think one of those buddies is Anaya.
I didn't write their names down. It sounds like that, but I don't think it is Anaya.
Put a pin in it.
I don't know. Put a pin in it. She's also got Cabriana's warder there, who she tortures to death by Snoo, is what I read it as. Basically.
Yay.
So yeah.
Aww. Yay.
Yeah. Aww. So she, like Moritz alluded to earlier, the method of torture and the darkness and of the way she does it. So she's got them both strung up in different cells, but with flows of air, I imagine. They're just hanging in the air, spread-eagled. She cuts their clothes off and burns them in front of them. And then she uses pain webs, like a weave of pain inside Cabriana's brain, and then ties it off and leaves. And then goes to the warder, and instead of using pain, she uses pleasure. And she can already see on the warder's face that he is feeling the pain through the bond. And then we learn over here as well that they didn't even, the Forsaken don't know anything about this bond business. It's new to them. This is a new thing with the power. And she's kind of impressed that these so-called Aes Sedai came up with this thing. So anyway, so she puts the pleasure web on the warder's brain, and then she kind of zones out and goes into this whole internal monologue thing where we learn about her past. As an Aes Sedai back in the day, she was a world-renowned healer. They used to travel her everywhere, all over the globe, to go and help people that were unhelpable, people on the brink of death that no one else could heal, and she would come in and she'd sort it all out. But she also liked to make these people suffer and torture them while she was doing it. So she had a kink that we will shame because it's not cool. And eventually they caught her and said to her, listen, the Aes Sedai, the council, whatever, like, you, this shit cannot stand any longer. You are a sick person. So either you can be bound. So here we hear about the binding again. So that would just make a weave to make her not be able to do it anymore, to not be a torturing psychopath anymore, or to be stilled completely. And of course, she chose option C, which was run away and join the Dark One. No one saw that coming. Yeah, so while she's, imagining all of this, she forgets about the weave that she's put onto the water. And when she looks again, he's chewed his tongue off and blood's pouring out of his mouth and his brain is dead. And she killed him. She's like, fuck, I should have been paying attention. I'm like, yeah, you normally have to pay attention during tortures, so I hear. Oh, yes, Shaidar Haran is there too. I forgot to mention. He's just hanging out in the hallways. On Semirhage's visit to the Pit of Doom, when she was summoned, the Dark One told her to obey Shaidar Haran and sent them both here to this place to do some torturing. So when she comes out of Cabriana's cell, he just floats up to her like that weird, fadey traveling maneuver, and tells her that, asks her, like, well, what did you get out of her? And she's like, dude, it's been like 5 minutes. I don't know. I've got her name. Her name is Cabriana. And he's like, all right, we'll torture her for everything that she's got. And then he disappears into the shadows. And this is a thing that's come up with us before as well, like a highly underutilized trick that these fades have, is being able to disappear in one shadow and come out far, far away in another shadow. And apparently this has been investigated by the Forsaken. Not even Agonor knew how they did it. He tested it and couldn't figure it out. The fades don't know how they do it either. They just, I don't know, I just do it. So no one knows how it works and why it's there or anything like that. We just know that they could have used it a lot, and they don't.
They know that the Fades don't know how it works because she had proven it by torturing Fades to make them tell her.
Of course she did. Yeah. So this is what I said. During this whole period, there's a lot of internal monologue. That's where we get all this stuff from. She's also pondering all the missing and dead Forsaken. She has a particular hate for Lanfear. I'd say like her hate for Lanfear is like Sammael's hate for Lews Therin. But I can't figure out why. Like, she just hopes that Lanfear would be around, who is still alive, so that she can torture her for being annoying, nosy.
Maybe she's jealous.
She's jealous. Like, her hate is just overwhelming for absolutely no reason that I can discern, other than like, Lanfear's always sticking her nose in other people's business. Like,
jealousy.
So what? So are you? Like,
maybe Lanfear stuck her nose in Semirhage's business in the Asian Ages. Maybe Lanfear was one of the people who figured out what she was busy doing and sort of
ousted her.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Because
saw she was Meryn saw that she was getting a little bit of basement business going down
excited.
in the Kudenkarl. Kudendarm.
Yeah. Well, something was going on. One of the things that she could be pissed off about is the fact that it was Semirhage who sent the Trollocs to the Stone of Tyr to fight Sammael's Trollocs, not Lanfear, as we all thought for many, many moons. So she was given orders from the Dark One himself. It's like, I don't want Sammael to kill him in the Stone of Tyr. Send some Trollocs as well to go and counter his Trollocs.
Yeah.
And that's maybe where Lanfear stuck her nose in.
Maybe.
And also got interfered. So another time that Lanfear was interfering in her business. So I don't know. It just seems like a pretty lame excuse for hating her so
Lanfear does not play well with others, and nor does Semirhage. So
no.
You're right. Like, there's no obvious reason, but I can see it.
Like, I mean, there's a huge history that we know of between Sammael and Lews Therin. How, like, Sammael was the general that led the armies that won it, but Lews Therin got all the credit. That he got into a sword fight with him and gave him that scar that he refused to heal. Like, there's a lot of history there. You can see why he hates him. But this one, we don't know enough about their history. But what they talk about is just like sticking her nose in other people's business. Like, it doesn't seem enough. But anyway, they are weirdos and evil monsters, so it could be just that. That's enough. Yeah. And basically, she heads back into the cell to go and continue her torturing of what's her name? I've already forgotten her name. Cabriana. And Cabriana is ready to break at that point, screaming, "Please, no, please!" And we also learn later on during my searches that after she gets information, Cabriana is killed here. We never see her again.
No.
She's a goner. And yeah, that's how this chapter ends.
Tasty.
So,
Bright and cheery.
bright and cheery. We end in a dungeon of torture.
Shaidar Haran strikes the living fear into Semirhage. Like, she is so scared of him in that little brief visit that he's there that she actually grabs his stomach like it feels like a ball of ice. She's definitely fears him like she fears the Dark One.
Which is how she should fear him, because he is an incarnation of the Dark One.
Like, he's like the hologram version that's going around.
Yes.
Except that hologram can actually touch and stab you with a pointy end.
Yeah, I think he is like the Dark One, the essence of the Dark One in a avatar.
Yeah.
But it's
it's scary motherfucker.
a long chapter, and it is a pretty gross chapter. I mean, it goes through all of this pleasures of almost like Sammael's whole pleasure center is his wrath and anger and just a war machine. He just wants to make war and kill on the battlefield. Where Graendal is the lustful one. Her pleasure is in compulsion and having pets. And then you go to Semirhage, it's just fucking torturous and a different level. it's and then
None of them pleasant people to be around.
yeah, and then a sprinkling of Shaidar Haran on top of that. It's just it's awesome.
Yeah. It's rough going.
So, Morris, you wanted to chat about Graendal there.
Joe, you called out most of the stuff that I wanted to say. I've got a couple of little notes and questions. I thought it was pretty ironic that Graendal mistrusts dark friends or friends of the dark because they're too easily swayed. Like you, Graendal, calling the kettle black here. Graendal is said here by Sammael. He admits she is the best at compulsion who has ever lived.
She's been practicing a long time.
And also being a psychologist,
Yeah. Words out of my mouth.
Maybe she was just a really bad psychologist, and the only way for her to, deliver results was to actually channel compulsion into people. Like, yeah, I went to her for one session and I don't smoke anymore. I hate this stuff.
Don't quit smoking after one session.
Quit smoking those chora leaves.
We went for one couples therapy and we don't fight at all anymore. We just love each other now, don't we, love?
Yeah, miraculous. We do murder people at night, but I mean, we hardly remember that at all. But I think there's actually a couple parallels between Graendal and Semirhage here. Like Graendal, yes, is really good at compulsion, but it's sort of a natural extension of her understanding of the human psyche. She is obsessed with basically debasing people of high standing. She is also extremely subtle and manipulative. Like Sammael is constantly commenting on just how subtle she is, he's reading into all of her talk and her actions, what he thinks she's trying to tell him between the lines, but she's operating another level or two above that. It's interesting how she then also quite tellingly refers to Sammael as the patient, right? Like in her time, you would always let the patient do X, Y, Z. And then in Semirhage's section, she also refers to Cabriana as a patient or as her warder as a patient. And there's a lot of talk, well, not a lot of talk, but there's mention of her prowess at healing and stuff. So she would have been the equivalent of a really good doctor back in the day.
Yeah.
And I was thinking these people of really, really noble professions are drawn to the shadow and their extensive skill in these noble professions. I mean, Semirhage is extremely good at torture because of her knowledge of the human body and her doctor skills, actually amplify her torturing skills. And the same with Graendal, like her psychological knowledge and expertise with psychology is what makes her extremely good at compulsion.
Yeah, it's insane. It's really really scary that these people with
It is.
intimate understanding of either the psyche or the anatomy of people know exactly how to take these thin strands of power and tie it off in your head to the point where you're willing to chew your own tongue out and just
Yes.
makes your brain explode.
And that's what makes this section so horrifying. It's not what she's actually doing. It's what Graendal and Semirhage are capable of, and the fact that like they also lean into Semirhage's enjoyment of it, right? Like she is so cold. She's obviously not crazy. She's cold and calculated. It's what makes the best sort of like serial killer media good as well, right? Like when someone is actually like a Hannibal Lecter, someone that is highly, highly intelligent, highly capable, extremely smart, and then just with like zero empathy, right? Like complete psychopath or sociopath, whatever. And that's what makes it really, really scary to me. Like that is the horrifying part of this chapter, is not what Semirhage is really doing there. It's how she was almost like indignant about how dare the Hall of Servants tell her that she's not allowed to do this to other human beings. Of course she can. And she turned to the
they
show.
deserved it, is her words.
They deserved
like
it.
The people she healed, they deserved to suffer the way she made them
yes,
suffer.
In her mind, exactly. And that's the part that really like crawls under my skin, right? Like that's what really makes her reprehensible. And I think I've said this before, but out of all the Forsaken, I dislike or hate Semirhage the most, and it is directly because of this chapter and anything to do with this sort of mentality, right? Like it is, but she is just evil.
Is that, I mean, you're talking about a person that
here we go.
Feels that, no, there's no standing up here. This is talking about who's the worst, more so.
Is it really so bad?
Is it really so? No, hear me out. She inflicts pain and torture on people that has got a period of time tied to it. The warder didn't last very long from the point of capture to death, and nor did the Aes Sedai. Where Graendal puts people in a state against their will and makes sex slaves of them for a long period of time. It's like, and then I won't kill them. I'll just let them go, and they got to go live with all the shit that happened. That's the ultimate mind fuck up of note. Like, you got to I'd rather go the route if I were the poor fucker that had to endure something like this. Is like, yeah, give me Semirhage, because at least I know it's going to be. I might have death by snoo snoo, my brain blow up, as opposed to being someone's sex puppet in a lustful, serving way, and have my looks altered so I'm like super attractive and like all about the flesh, and then outcasted, and then you're going to live with the fact that you were used in very demeaning ways, maybe. I don't know.
Likely. Just remember that Semirhage here bemoans the fact that she doesn't have a lot of time. Like, she would have made this stretch out a lot longer.
Yes,
it was
this is true. This is true.
Yes. So, I mean,
her Shaidar Haran standing outside. He wants answers now.
Yeah.
So she's
and I think, but you are right about Graendal as well, and like the true horrid nature of what she's doing, because I don't know if we're supposed to think this, but I this is my headcanon. I bet that Graendal actually uses as little compulsion as possible, and probably tries to force these people into these situations with as little forcing as possible. Like, manipulating them, because she is a master of the mind and she knows how the mind works and stuff. She is likely, just because they say she is the best at compulsion doesn't mean she's just flat out compelling these people, because you also see them react in ways, right? Like when the people notice that her attention is on them, they brighten up and they sort of like they try to please like even more. You know, they're there to like make sure that she
best
sees.
type of
It
compulsion.
almost hints at still a little bit of not complete autonomy, but some like recognition of like, oh, now I need to act even more. She's not just like flicked on the on switch and now they're always on permanent display. They crank it up when they see that she's watching, which to me gives a little bit of an image of like, oh, so they're still in there and they're still reacting to what's happening around them, which is messed up.
Yeah, it's basically the human brain is mapped with choices and decisions. She's just manipulating that the choice and the decision is always going into what she wants. So you're not a robot that's doing the bidding of, I'm not brain what's the word I'm looking for?
Brainwashing, programming.
It's not complete brainwashing. It is you just making the decision that I want you to make ever so subtly, and looking for like the recognition, like the pleasure sensor part of this thing is like a smile that comes from me, Graendal. It's like, get you off. It's fucking insane. It's nuts.
It's gross.
I think that made me think about the specificity of it all. Like being a psychologist, she can identify your weaknesses and your desires, and then she doesn't just blanket compulse you like Ravine would on someone, because he doesn't know the subtleties of it. Whereas she would just compel that part of your brain specifically because that's what you really want.
Exactly.
And then work on that. Like Nynaeve would heal a specific area, whereas another Aes Sedai would just blanket heal you, you know, just like the general ice bath scenario.
Now, I'm gonna now, after the discussion that we've had, and we see how terrible these two Forsaken are. Don't you miss Lanfear? I mean, Lanfear is just the total package.
Billy, I kind of do.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, she was at least like sort of on loose there inside.
Yeah,
like,
she's
a little
nut.
Easy on the eyes.
She's love nut. She's easy on the eyes. Just don't get your skin made into a balloon by her.
Think of what she did to Moraine and Lan and Egwene and Avienda. I'll just remind myself of that.
Also, one final thing that you reminded me of here, talking about all these people, they were like at the top of their games, these Forsaken back in the day. And that's true. I mean, when you look at back at like the Forsaken or in the Age of Legends, you earned a third name because of what you brought to society, Luz, Theron, Telemon. You know, you got that third name as like, you had to be the best. And how many of these Forsaken have 3 names?
All of them almost.
Like most of them, if not all of them. I don't know if it's all, but it's definitely most of them. So they already reached that. Oh, shit. I can go, I'll call that shit right back right now in front of the computer. But yeah, so like they've already, whatever they were in, from music to philosophy, Sammael was a philosopher. Old Sammael was a general, like all the top of their fields.
Yeah.
And just turned and went, no, fuck this. This is a losing battle. I'm going over that side.
But they were all also fatally flawed, right? Graendal says here, yes, after she's like suggests, or Sammael suggests linking or something, one of them makes the comment like, no, trust was no part of any of them. You just know, no, they can't work together. She suggests like, should we team up together? No, sorry, never gonna work. It's just never gonna happen.
No.
She makes mention here, is it Graendal or Sammael that says, events to the south had Demondred's mark all over them?
Yes.
South of what? South of Orodaman. So on the Elmouth Plain and Tarabon.
I don't know about that either. I also read that and I was like, events to the south, because I mean, south of where? Or was it? I think it was him. I thought it was Sammael, and him being in Illian, like, what the fuck is south of that?
No.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, so I didn't know.
Because remember, we don't know where
Demondred always preferred proxies.
In this, that's Graendal's section. That says that.
Yes.
Okay.
And she's in Orodaman.
She is in Orodaman.
So, proxies. Elmouth Plain, Tarabon, Amadicia. I mean,
maybe the unrest.
You can go south of the Dragonsworn. Yeah, I was going to say that. That's the only thing.
Maybe.
And with the White Cloaks.
I mean, Caradon is operating there. thanks to Kerry, know that Carradine is under orders from Sammael. So if this was Graendal's thoughts, I forget now if it was Graendal or Sammael's thought.
No, Billy just said it was Graendal's.
If it is, then that makes sense for her to not know that it isn't Demandred. It's actually Sammael. Sammael acting through the White Cloaks to sow unrest, and Jacob Carradine. So maybe it's that.
It has to be her, because like I said, I mean, Sammael's in Illian. There's nothing south unless you count the sea folk.
The comment about the proxies as well had me thinking about proxies like Mazrim Taib.
I mean, yes, but
he was in the
but
north.
time's not south. He was in Saldaea and is now in Andor, right? Like that's not really south of anything that's either Graendal or no. This is a stretch. it's not,
just going around in circles.
No.
All right.
Anything else from Evil?
No. I'm just gonna. I don't want to have too much fan boys stuff going.
Okay. Well, then let's move on to chapter 7 called A Matter of Thought. Okay, and I'll take my hand at summarizing a chapter again. Bit rusty, but let's see how this goes.
Welcome back, Moritz.
Hi, guys.
What you got?
What you guys doing? Okay, so we join Elaine as she and Nynaeve prepare to go to bed and to go to Tel'aran'rhiod. Their room is busted up. Holes in the plaster, table is askew, chips in the vase holding sad flowers. It's a pretty sorry sight. Like there's about 6 or 7 things listed, all busted. Elayne is tired from channeling all day, trying to make Ter'angreal, but at least she's getting better. Turns out copying Ter'angreal seems much easier than making new ones from scratch. And it also seems like the placing of the individual quote-unquote parts, so like molecules or like, you know, like the tiny building blocks of these things is vital, and it like even the color and that sort of stuff influences how this thing works. So she's talking about how she's making copies of the stone ring and it has to be the same shape, otherwise it doesn't work. But she's only been able to make a red one or a blue one, not a red and blue flecked stone ring. So they don't work exactly the same. Which is interesting. Like you never think of the physical properties of the thing having.
Does she have to have like raw material that she picks up with a weave, and then, or is the weave building the material, like 3D printing it through the power?
You know what I think it is, because she said she started it was stone, now it's something else. What she's doing is alchemy. She starts with a stone and she changes it on a molecular level, moves the atoms around so that it becomes something else and has a specific purpose.
Yeah, but I mean
that's she has like this metal disc as well.
It's like does she start off with the raw material?
I think she's working with something, Vil.
Okay.
Yeah, she starts with a stone and she changes it into something else. But maybe that's her problem. Maybe that's why it's not working. Maybe those rings weren't stone to begin with, and that's where her problem
Maybe they
lies.
started somewhere else. Anyway, we learned that what she's doing is actually super dangerous. Like some Aes Sedai have been burnt out or even killed studying Ter'angreal like this. So, you know, Elayne is doing some pretty dangerous research here. There's the one ring that she made, the one copy that didn't quite turn out right, only gives nightmares. You know, like
the one ring to rule them all and in the darkness bind them.
So Elayne reminds Nynaeve that they can't be late because, quote unquote, they don't like waiting in Tel'aran'rhiod. And at this point, I thought she was talking about the wise ones.
No,
but as we find out, that's not the case.
Either or. If we write either way.
True. So they drink a tea that Nynaeve made for them to help them fall asleep, and they use copies of the OG stone ring, Ter'angreal, to go to Tel'aran'rhiod. But before they doze off, they both sort of jointly lament Egwene's absence due to her injury in the Lanfear attack, and that triggers a dangerous thought, which is it's also the day that Lan disappeared. So no one knows where Lan is since that day. And they mention here that that's a month and a half ago, so it's 6 odd weeks later. Nynaeve is the first to fall asleep, and as Elayne drifts off, she thinks about the hall of the tower in Saladar and how they've been so slow to make decisions, and how a number of other fleeting thoughts before she also appears then in Tel'aran'rhiod. She's standing in the street in Saladar, and Nynaeve, Siuan, and Leanne are there waiting for her. Siuan is the only solid-looking one because she's using that OG Ter'angreal. The rest of them appear a little like ghost-like, so somewhat translucent, which is a feature we've seen before. I'm going to gloss over some of the repetition of like what Tel'aran'rhiod
there is
is.
a lot of repetition in this.
There is. So Siuan is bitching about what we now know are the Aes Sedai being late. But finally, Sheriam, Carlinia, Morvrin, Morel, Anaya, and Bjorn all appear, and they come marching out of a building in Sanadar. We're reminded here that the Aes Sedai are not very good at controlling Tel'aran'rhiod, which will become painfully obvious later, but they're sowing the seeds here for events later in the chapter, obviously. Their clothing is used as a shorthand for showing how their subconscious is still affecting their reality, blah, blah, blah. But an interesting one here is Morel, who's wearing a wide silver collar supporting 3 small daggers, and a 4th appears and disappears as she's studying Nynaeve. What did you guys think this was?
Lan's
this jumped straight out at me, yeah.
Yeah.
She's got her 3 warders and Lan, yeah.
These are marriage knives. There is a rumor that Morel has married 3 of her warders, and it is true. And these are Ibudari marriage knives, which are all like the color of the setting of the stones and how many stones are inset on all of them actually show how many kids she's had by each husband, and whether the kids are alive or not, and all that sort of stuff. So I think a lot is communicated in this. But yeah, that 4th one is universally accepted as her thinking of Lan and marrying him, because she's looking at Nynaeve when it appears and disappears. Mm-hmm. Lots of these little hints here. Not even so subtle, like quite bright, shine-posted hints. So Morel gets testy, and she says they should get going to the tower, and Elayne reckons Morel is angry because of previous interactions with the Wise Ones in Tel'aran'rhiod. Since Egwene's injury, the Aes Sedai have been meeting with only the Wise Ones, and that's been a bit like my note is like oil and water, right? Like the Aes Sedai and the Wise Ones all very, very proud and not very good at taking any kind of direction. There's a little bit about a cook appearing, but that's not important. There's a lot of, reminding us again that, the nature of Tel'aran'rhiod, because again, exactly, there's going to be some shenanigans later, and we need to be coached. Jody's literally yawning as I go through this well-trodden territory again. Siuan and Leanne continue their little game of pretending not to get along at all, like sort of snapping at each other. We hear here that apparently Morel has been particularly hard on Nynaeve in the last couple of weeks. I was wondering why this is. Is she trying to test Nynaeve and sort of push her into maturity and acting properly so that she can pass the bond on? I can't remember. Is Moiraine's intention for Morel to pass the bond to Nynaeve when she's ready? Because I think that so. Was Moiraine's reticence to pass it directly to Nynaeve because she's not ready for it. So maybe she's instructed Morel to please just be the caretaker of Lan while he's going to deal with my death. Apparently Morel actually has sex with Lan, they sleep together, because it's a mechanism that she has used to great effect in the past to actually cheer them up, I guess. Here's a quick roll in the hay, feel better. But anyway, I was just trying to think why is Morel being hard on Nynaeve? Maybe she's trying to just push her along. Eventually, after some terse words between all of them, they shift to Elaida's study. They pointedly do not refer to it as the Amelin study. But when they're there, they notice, or Elayne notices, that there are no more stools. So Elaida quickly running out of buddies. Leanne heads off to go check on some of her messaging from her network, and Nynaeve is sent after her by Sheriam and Morel, who again bites Nynaeve's head off when Nynaeve goes, I don't think, and Morel chimes in. She goes, you often don't. Go. Shut up, accept it, go. Elaida briefly appears in her chair, sounding off about the tower being reunited under her as she had foretold, blah, 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 and then she disappears again. But what's notable here is that she's wearing a stole with no blue band on it. So I don't know if in the real world she has disbanded the blue Aja, or if she's just dreaming about a stole with no blue on it. Can't remember. So they start rifling through the messages as they do on both Elaida and Alviarin's desks. So they find out here that Alviarin sometimes directly countermands Elaida's orders. There's a report from Danelle, who is Masana, about the acceptance of some world leaders, acceptance of Elaida backing Rand. They sort of speculate about what this could be, but the leaders they mention are Matan Stepanios, who accepts wholeheartedly. He's the king of Illian, where we and the Aes Sedai know that actually it's Lord Brend or Sammael that's ruling. King Rodrin is trying to take every side. He's the king of Mirundi. Alejandre wants more time to consider. She's the queen of Gildan that we met when she meets with Masema. Tylan also wants more time. She's the queen of Altara, and she's Matt's cougar, the one that sort of takes Matt on as her pet.
Yeah.
We hear here that Moraine's arrest warrant is still valid, so Elaida doesn't know that Moraine is dead. Elaida still seems to be planning the construction of a palace for her. She also mentions in one of these notes that the accepted Shemarin has run away, so we find out that she has actually demoted Shemarin. Shemarin eventually flees to Saladar and is recognized by Gawain when Gawain comes into town. Shemarin, who is now an accepted, poses as a washerwoman in Saladar. And I'm eager to learn how they don't notice that she can channel and try to recruit her, or some of the other Aes Sedai don't recognize her. If Gawain would recognize her, how much time has he spent around Shemarin specifically? More than other Aes Sedai? Surely not.
And she wasn't snowed or anything. She was just demoted.
Exactly, so she can still channel. That's what I mean.
It's like.
But the women can sense if another woman can channel. So if they, but I think maybe it's because she's in a town with 200 other women who can channel. Maybe she just gets lost in the din,
Maybe
they're always feeling women who can channel around them.
Yeah. Anyway, much like us reading all these goddamn reports, Elayne starts getting bored and she just imagines a stool to sit on, which is you can tell she's again here showing us, okay, Elayne knows what's going. And then Siuan does the same thing and she gives Elayne a tight smile. So, okay, cool. We've been told, okay, Siuan has been listening. She's learned. She's come some way. Elayne showing, she's totally in control. Siuan much more in control than the other Aes Sedai, just letting us know who will be able to imagine corridors later. We learn also that the Blight is still quiet and that the fighting among the borderlands, specifically Shinar and Arafel, which is super weird, seems to be dying down. So maybe this is just more Forsaken work, maybe Forsaken are sowing chaos in the borderlands. It's very weird for Shinar and Arafel to be fighting each other. We find out that there's still fighting in Tarabon and on the Elmoth Plain, and that the only news from that area sort of comes via Amadisia, saying that the Aes Sedai are involved in the fighting. Now, take news from Amadisia regarding the Aes Sedai with a grain of salt, right? Are they maybe just reporting still on the Damane who channeled there? So it must be Aes Sedai, those Aes Sedai witches, blah, blah, blah. Also learn about a lot of rumors in here that are not straight up reports, but strange occurrences in Cairhien and Illian, reasons for Pedro-Nile's recall of his troops. Is he going to make a play for the throne? Elayne thinks that's unnecessary. He basically rules there anyway. But then there's one fun one, which is that apparently Morghese is raising an army in the west of Andor under the flag of Manetheren.
Yeah.
First I thought, Matt's army in the band. And it was no, wait, the west. Oh. That's Perrin.
Yep.
So news of Perrin's army being... growing is reaching the White Tower now. But Elayne perks up at the mention of her own name. She's apparently to be returned to the tower immediately and at all costs. Elaida makes a note, if anyone failed at an attempt, they would envy the Makura woman.
Rhonda Makura.
Rhonda made an example of, that's the one.
Rhonda Rousey,
She also mentions Elaida in the note that the ruling house in Andor was the key. And Elayne and the other Aes Sedai key to what? I don't know.
To winning the last battle. That was Elaida's foretelling, which is why she put herself in.
Oh, that's right. That's true. Oh, good remembering, Joe. Yes.
I remember things sometimes.
Elaida's response to Rand's amnesty is evident from the state of the report. It sounds like it was crumpled up and then smoothed out again. There's no notes on this one, but apparently a lot of the other ones have very biting words scrawled on them. It's a cool insight Elayne can intuit from how subsequent reports are, she can read Elaida's mood in the crumpling up of the paper and then the biting remarks in some of the other reports, which I thought was just this really unnecessary but cool little specific detail to put in there for, from Robert Jordan to let us understand that not only can we picture Elaida being this way, but reminding us that Elayne is smart enough to sort of intuit this from these little context clues.
And she's also spent a lot of time with her growing up.
Yes, so... she knows her. She knows her well, we hear that Elaida is obviously desperate to get the Aes Sedai back to the tower because it seems like they're split into three neat groups, right? A third of the Aes Sedai in the tower, a third of them are in Saladar, and a third of the total Aes Sedai are still out and about. just kicking it. We also learn Elaida has sent emissaries to Rand in Cairhien, not Caemlyn. She means to offer Rand support and an escort to the tower. And this is severely distressing to Elayne. She still feels like she needs to be there, or they need to help him somehow. And they figure, well, at least she sent the emissaries to Cairhien, and it's going to take her time to realize that he's not there, and then get back to Caemlyn, where they know that Rand is, so they can get to Rand first.
He might be at Illian at that point in time anyway.
He could be fucking anywhere. He could be making whoopee in Seanchan.
Yeah.
Suddenly, they hear a scream and wordless shouts from the anteroom. So they rush out to find Anaya, Morven, and Carlinia, who've been studying the keeper's desk, are missing, but they can still see the outer doors from the chamber are in the process of closing, and they hear more screams on the other side. So they follow out, and they find a nightmare. The corridor sort of gives way to this vast, it sounds like almost like an infinite cavern of just Trolloc torture stuff. More torture. Yay.
Yes.
But some of these Trollocs are even bigger than real Trollocs. So this is quite literally a nightmare that someone had of Trollocs. And what they explain is that sometimes nightmares, even when people wake up, these become detached and they float around. And the Aiel wise ones, as a matter of principle,
Destroy them.
when they find these, they destroy them so that they can't just like percolate throughout Teleron.
But now,
right? Because they can sort of grow in power.
You wouldn't think that nightmare would have come from from the Blight or from the Borderlands, where they see Trollocs and deal with it. So someone in the tower is having these dreams. So maybe Missana is like having some dreams about her hordes or something.
I don't think it's a dark friend. I think it's someone that's scared of Trollocs. That's why they're dreaming them even bigger than what they really are.
It could be a dark friend. But a Black Aja in the tower who's just, like Carradine, who's stuck between a rock and a hard place and is fearing what the results are going to be.
It could be.
Consequences.
It would be someone that has had some exposure to Trollocs.
Yes.
And cooked
not nothing, because they are like boar-snouted and they do look like Trollocs, even if some of them are bigger. So, in this nightmare, Carlinia is being lowered upside down, so she's tied up by her ankles into a pot of boiling oil, and her hair is sort of like almost in the liquid. And they see Morven and Anaya at the edge of the nightmare, and just as they get there, the two Aes Sedai, Morven and Anaya, sort of get like almost like smoky wisps, and they get sucked into this nightmare. And as soon as they're in there, instantly Anaya is hanging from her wrists, while the Trollocs sort of caper around her, flogging her with metal-tipped whips, and Morven is being stretched out on a good old classic torture rack.
Yeah.
Sheriam, Morel, and Biernan immediately link, but Elayne tells them, no, don't do this. What you need to do is you need to not accept it as real. Channeling at it is not going to help, but they ignore her like the idiots that they are. And they channel anyway, and even as the weave dissolves into nothing in the nightmare, the Aes Sedai are pulled into it as well, presumably by this weave, right? Because they are accepting the nightmare as real, they have interacted with it via a weave, and because they've channeled into it, they get sucked in as well. So they're also immediately put to torture, the instant they're in there, they're in these torture devices. Sheriam's head is sticking out of the top of some like metal bell-shaped thing with levers and stuff on the outside that these Trollocs are like frenetically pulling at. But I think the other two are sort of out of sight. Elayne turns to Siuan and she asks her if she remembers what she's been taught about nightmares, to which Siuan correctly replies to not accept it as real. Good work, Siuan, you do listen. So they try to imagine the hallway from before, but it turns out they're going to need the help from the Aes Sedai inside because it is too much for just them to imagine away. So Elayne realizes they'll need to actually step into the nightmare to be able to be heard by the other Aes Sedai. And holy shit, what a fucking gamble, right?
Yeah.
You are stepping into this thing that is almost certain death. We'll come back to Elaine's bravery. So they do step into it, they enter, and immediately they're also in the same position as the rest, so they're immediately put to torture. And in fact, when they're in the nightmare, the tower hallway is not even visible. So when you're in this nightmare, you're not aware of anything outside of it, which is terrifying in itself. So Elayne finds herself lying on her belly on a rough grey stone, or on rough grey stone, with her wrists and ankles tied at the small of her back. And Siuan starts screaming to Sheriam, telling her to believe that it is a dream and not reality. And Elayne sort of takes up the call as well. Elayne can't make the ropes disappear just by using her Tel'aran'rhiod sort of manifestation powers, and even the true source becomes available to her. So in this nightmare, the true source is just not available to you. Trolloc starts working on Elayne, flipping her on her side and pinning her down, and starts cutting away at her clothes, described as like a hunter skinning an animal that it's caught. So she keeps imploring the Aes Sedai to imagine the corridor and reject the nightmare as reality, as the Trolloc then flips her on her belly and puts a knife to her throat and actually starts to cut. But luckily, in that moment, they are suddenly back in the hallway, and Elayne actually has like a spot of blood on her throat. So, I mean, she was milliseconds away of actually just being murdered. Siuan is a mass of bruises. Carlinia's hair has been burnt down to a hand from her scalp. Like, that's pretty close. She's going to have a bob from now on. Pixie cut. Sheriam and Anaya seem to be weeping heaps of bloody rags. Morel is naked and covered in welts, and Morven is moving unnaturally, and Bianen's dress has been clawed to shreds. I mean, these ladies are in terrible shape. So all the Aes Sedai want to go back to Saladar, but Siuan says that she will stay, and Elayne wishes to stay with Siuan. But the Aes Sedai tell them, don't be foolish, and to return with him. But when the Aes Sedai disappear, Elayne knows that she has a few moments before anyone's going to come in and check on her. So she transports herself to the Grand Hall in the Caemlyn Palace. And what she finds is really annoying. It's the Lion Throne sitting on some kind of pedestal with a throne made of golden dragons that sits on the dais where the Lion Throne should be. She wonders what Rand thinks he is doing, and she finally steps out of Tel'aran'rhiod. Then, for a brief moment, we switch points of view to that of Demandred, who steps out from behind. He steps out from behind a column where he was observing Elayne. So Demandred hanging out in the Grand Hall in Caemlyn, looking for Rand. He could not have been waiting there for Elayne. Don't know what he was doing there.
No,
but
because he's Taim and he's there.
Nah. Well, he's at the farm.
Well, that's a short gateway, a trip away.
It is. You can tell that Elayne does not like what Rand is busy doing there, and he sort of says to no one in particular, let the Lord of Chaos rule, and then leaves Tel'aran'rhiod via a gateway.
Now,
you see,
I have to ask at this specific junction there, is that a real reflection of the throne situation in the Great Hall?
I think so.
We think so, we know so. Or is it something that, because let the Lord of Chaos rules, like so division, so, he might have insight now at this stage to Elayne and Rand.
Are you thinking that maybe it's something that Demandred has manifested in Tel'aran'rhiod?
Demandred has manifested it in Tel'aran'rhiod.
He would need to know that Elayne is going to appear there.
Yeah, I know. But then again, mistakes have been
made. I
made.
recall reading that Rand put the Lion Throne up on a dais, like up on a pedestal, and
Pedro
refuses
Nile
to sit in it.
Said that. That was a report from him, right? That was one of the things he rattles off to Morghese about, like, what
but he hasn't even
the Dragon
been
Reborn has done in Caemlyn.
His reports is all like half of it's rubbish.
No, it was all true. Remember, we went through the things that he said, and they're all true, but the spin he puts on it is that Rand is like acting like this crazed ruler when Rand literally just can't fit on the Lion Throne. And I bet you Rand did not have this throne commissioned. I bet you when we get to Rand's section or his point of view, he's going to comment on this gaudy piece of shit. I wish the fucking Andorran nobles didn't commission this thing.
I think we've
It's going to
already
be
been
totally
there.
them. Some sycophant. I'm telling you, I remember reading this. It's not Demandred doing this.
That's my read.
That's what it really looks like.
In fact, it's really hard to keep things in Tel'aran'rhiod different from what they are in the real world. They always snap back.
No, it's just okay. I accept that.
It's a good thought. I mean, Demandred is like number one, let the Lord of Chaos rule. I mean, he says those very words in this section, right? So, I mean, it's an interesting thought. But I think in this specific case, I think it is a reflection of the real world. All right. Did you guys have anything to add to that chapter? I mean, it's just basically lots and lots of reports, sort of setting the scene. It's almost like a prologue type chapter. Like, maybe I'm lifting this from Morgan on Podcast of the Dragon. Her episode on the prologue is all about like how, it's just setting the stage, like reminding you of a lot of things. But that's how this reads. Like all those reports are things we know from reading the series, and maybe new readers, I can't extract the value from it as a rereader that a new reader would. But I guess a lot of it is just reinforcing some of the pieces on the board for new readers. And then the nightmare thing. Now, isn't there, big question, listeners, please answer my call. Isn't there like quite a serious antagonist in the story that is defeated by using a nightmare? Isn't like one of the Forsaken, or I looked it up. I thought maybe it was Slayer, because like he's in Tel'aran'rhiod with Perrin. Like, isn't someone beaten by using a nightmare? Like they chase someone into a nightmare and then leave them there.
You're asking the wrong person.
That's that person dealt with.
Yeah. No, he specifically asked our listeners, knowing that neither of us are going to know that.
Yeah. I seem to recall. I know that a golem is killed using the skimming void. I think the golem is at one point kicked into a gateway into that place that's outside of space and time that the discs that Rand skimmed on is in. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Put a pin in it. A couple pins in this episode, but I'm pretty sure someone is dealt with by using a nightmare.
There's you mentioned that scene that really stuck with me as well, with the Trolloc cutting off Elaine's clothes, like he's skinning an animal. Like the scene is, he has her on her back and he's like cutting it off the clothes, and then he flips her over onto her belly and pushes his knee into her back, and then he like grabs her hair. This is how, like, I read it, I don't know if this is true, and then pulls her head back like this and puts a knife against her throat, and then that's when everything snaps back. Like,
I mean, holy
girl.
shit. Holy shit.
Whoa.
Yeah. All cards on the table. I started reading the next chapter today, and Nynaeve calls out here. She knows that for Elayne to have done that, she's specifically, Elaine's not saying that she went into the nightmare to go get those people out, but Nynaeve knows that she would have had to do that, and it's frustrating to Nynaeve that Elayne can't admit to how brave she is.
Mm-hmm. Brave and
stupid. That is a serious Hail Mary. I mean, she was milliseconds away from dying.
Well, all of them.
She'll be fine. She's the key. She's the key, dude. Doesn't matter. Yeah. It's been foretold.
True. Some plot armor for her. What else? Bit of a just an FYI chapter.
You did a very good job there. Yeah. I call these chapters a bit of a mini slog.
That's a harsh indictment. Don't invoke the S word, or just like, I mean, we had a nightmare event here. That was pretty good.
Yeah, we had a
good chapter.
The nightmare event was 2 pages.
It's a long chapter. I glossed over a lot of what Jody was alluding to at the beginning of this episode, right? A lot of repetition around how Tel'aran'rhiod works, like what all this stuff means and blah, blah, blah. But like I said, I think a lot of it is just to freshen people's memories so that when things are happening in the climax of that chapter, they make a bit more sense.
I get. It's just...
Yeah, look,
it's hard to read.
We're chapters, what were this? 4, 5, and 6, or 5, 6,
5, 6, and 7.
5, 6, and 7. It's early days. This happens at the beginning of every book.
It does.
We go over things again, refreshers and whatnot. I think it's done now. I hope so, at least. From now on, it'll all be new stuff.
Fingers
crossed. There was some juicy bits.
Yeah. All right. So, have you guys remembered to pick your favorite moments?
Yes, I did. I go first. I shut it out.
I never do.
Olver.
Nice. Yeah.
That's it. Olver.
Game over. Yeah, there's not a lot to add to that. I mean, we did say at the time, or at least I did. I love how Olver is just a mini version of Matt, and Matt in typical Matt fashion, cannot see it. I think people say it outright in the story, and Matt's like, "What? What are you talking about? It's nothing like me." He's exactly like Matt. Starts gambling, snakes and foxes, checking out the woman's cleavage, so he is a little Matt.
Mm-hmm.
No, we didn't even touch at all on the fact that he is Graendal Cain reborn.
Well, that's because he isn't.
Isn't he?
Mm-mm. The timelines don't match up.
Yeah, but there's a lot of,
He's
this
born.
is not us in... Yeah, but time in Tel'aran'rhiod doesn't work the same.
No, but you can't be in both at the same time.
He's
No,
9.
I'm not saying that you are, but...
But we've
That
met
doesn't
Graendal
mean
Cain
anything.
in Tel'aran'rhiod when Olver
Couple
was
of
busy
months
running
ago.
around in the real world.
Yeah, but I'm saying that timelines don't work the same, especially not for the heroes of the Horn that are trapped inside them.
No, but
Maybe for
timelines
you as a
don't go
visitor.
backwards, Joe. Time
They
may not travel at
That's
the
what a
same
line does.
speed.
Lines go in both directions. And time is not linear, it's circular.
It's a flat circle.
It's a wheel of time.
You're a flat earther.
Okay.
Just saying. Yeah, man, everything's held in by
The
like
edge.
mountains of ice that are around on the edge. The water doesn't fall off into space. Don't you know, Willie? Jesus, it's so obvious.
You globalists.
Do your research.
Okay, Joe, what's your favorite moment?
I don't know. Should you not go first, or
Should I tell
Mine's
you
not
what
Matt.
our favorite moment is?
No, I never choose a favorite moment in advance. I always just go through the podcast, and at the end, I go, yeah, that was a cool spot.
Okay, you go for it.
I'm going to go with Semirhage. Moritz's look of disgust.
Gross. I just threw up a little.
No. When Shaidar Haran steps over her and she has to look up, crane her neck up, and she's shitting herself, and she forces herself not to step backwards. I love just seeing a Forsaken put in their place.
Cowed.
Make him feel some fear for a change.
Yeah.
And then she's like looking up at him, freaking out. She says she hadn't felt that fear in like 1,000 years, like, yeah, fuck you.
Yeah.
There we go. That's my favorite moment.
That's amazing. Mine is Matt trying to pick up the barmaid while Nalessian, Dared, and Tilmanes are laughing in the background.
That was the obvious choice, which is why I went for the other one.
Yes,
Of course it was Matt. All right.
My honorable mention was Elayne creating that stool to sit on and Siuan copying her and then giving her like a little smile, like, see, I can do it. I've been listening. It's almost like, oh, that's a good idea. We should do that.
What is a cat's cradle?
Isn't that a thing with your strings between your fingers?
Yeah, strings between your fingers, I think.
And you make little patterns out of the strings by weaving the... and I think she's doing that because she can't weave anymore, right? She doesn't have one power, so...
Oh, that's a good observation.
Comforting to her. Oh, I just thought of that right now. But also the fact that Elayne makes a stool and not a chair, because she knows that if the Aes Sedai see the chair, they're going to give her shit for sitting down and doing nothing.
Yes.
So she makes
being
her
too comfortable.
as inconspicuous and as uncomfortable as possible. Like, not only controlling it, but like making decisions. She could have made a chair, but she chooses not to.
Smart cookie. Love Elayne. All right, then. So, to our listeners, send in your favorite moments, your corrections, your theories. Hey, send us a voice message. You can do that via the social media links in the episode description below, including the link to our website homepage, where you can leave a 90-second voice message. If it's suitable, I'll put it in the episode. So give it a spin. Also on our homepage is a link to our merch store now, where you can have a choice of 2 different t-shirts. Slowly but surely, we're adding some variety to our line, but I'm finding it pretty fun. Like it's pretty enjoyable. So send in some t-shirt ideas. Maybe we have a batch of those printed up as well. In the episode description, you will also find a link to our Discord server. So give that a shot. A couple of people have joined already. We're planning some interesting features for Discord in the future. So if you join in now, maybe, if you're not a regular Discord user, come to grips with how to use it. I know I'm still learning a lot. I'm a complete newbie. But come join us there for a good old chat. And then, finally, tune in next time when we cover the next batch of chapters, which will be Chapter 8, called The Storm Gathers, through to the end of chapter 11 called Lessons and Teachers. So that's back to 4 chapters again. I'm amped, eh? This book has me hooked like a 5-pound trout.
Oh, there's a t-shirt.
Hey! There's definitely got to be a 5-pound trout t-shirt somewhere. And a burnt fade t-shirt somehow. We're going to make it work.
Certainly. We should make a shirt that when you burn it smells like a burning fade. There you go.
So that people have to keep buying them so that they can keep burning them. Ah, genius.
Recurring
Jody.
customers. Cha-ching,
Wow.
cha-ching. We should make the t-shirt scratch and sniff. That's what it smells.
Oh, and the smell can be a burnt fade. Well, on that capitalist note, I will say goodbye and see you folks next time. So until then, sleep well and wake.
That's what he said.
Live long and prosper.